What's good, Detroit Sports Nation? I am Eric Vincent, your host here at the DSN News Desk. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate your time and support. And Lions fans, we're going to have to brace ourselves for this part of the offseason. We knew this was coming. And per the odds makers and some reports that we've seen online per DraftKings and other booking sites, Ben Johnson, the Detroit Lions' current offensive coordinator, is the lead favorite to become the new head coach for not one, but two different teams right now as it stands. And those two teams are the Carolina Panthers and the Indianapolis Colts. Now, obviously, he can't, go to two different teams. He's going to have to pick between the two or a different team or stay with the Lions. But as it stands right now, the Colts actually interviewed Ben Johnson last week, and the Panthers are scheduled to interview Ben Johnson this week. I believe tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. And we can't be surprised about this. This is not a shock. This is nothing, that should come as a surprise because we knew what a hot commodity Ben Johnson was going to be. We understand the value that he brings to this team, and we understand that the Lions wouldn't be 9-8 without Ben Johnson. The offense wouldn't have looked the way it did. Jared Goff wouldn't have looked as productive as he did without Ben Johnson. He deserves a lot of credit. I was just on Beyond the Box yesterday with AJ, and we were giving our superlatives for the Detroit Lions season, and the Lion King Award was the MVP award. And for me, I had to give it to Ben Johnson. I feel like he is owed a lot of the credit for what we've seen and how he's been able to put not just certain players, like not just the quarterback, not just the receivers, not just running backs. He's done a great job in putting everybody on that Lions offensive unit in the best possible position to be successful. Whether it was putting Jared Goff in numerous positions in terms of like what suits him the best, like play action sets. They do that a lot because he works best with that. Finding ways to put DeAndre Swift in space. Finding ways to put Penei Sewell out in open space to be a lead blocker with his speed, athleticism, and strength. Like, that genius is behind the mind of Ben Johnson. And it's kind of sucks because obviously we wanted to see him stick around a little bit longer. I mean, we just had him, promoted to offensive coordinator in 2021, 2022 when the Anthony Lynn experiment wasn't working. And a lot of his responsibility was getting diluted down when the offense was looking very stagnant and poor behind the ideas and the coordinating of Anthony Lynn. And a lot of that responsibility went to Dan Campbell as well as Ben Johnson, who I believe at the time was a quarterback assistant coordinator, I want to say, or a tight end assistant coordinator, one of the two. And his influence and creativity really started to help with the Lions, not even just this season, but the season before in 2021, 2022. If you remember how the season started off, again, offense was really bad, and three things really took shape for the offense to really rejuvenate itself. For one, they got healthy. If you remember how the season started off, Taylor Decker didn't play for the first several games. And you had Penei Sewell, who was supposed to be starting and beginning his career at right tackle, was forced to shift over to left. He still played great at the position, but it kind of left a couple holes throughout the offensive line, and it showed throughout the season where they couldn't protect Goff on a week-in, week-out basis. So that was a big part. When he came back and they got healthy, the offense looked totally different. Number two, they got Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds was a huge acquisition last season for the Detroit Lions. They didn't have the wavelength between Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown yet. The wide receiver position really was an extreme hole all around. I mean, they were still trying to rely on Quentin Cephas, who hasn't ever been healthy with the Detroit Lions. And there was nothing clicking. TJ Hockenson wasn't doing anything, which is why he got traded. And they needed to make a change. And acquiring Josh Reynolds for Jared Goff, who had a rapport with him during their days as Rams together, clearly showed and carried over when he became a Detroit Lion, becoming that reliable number two and sometimes low-end number one option for the Detroit Lions. That was up until Amon-Ra St. Brown got comfortable and showed how great he can be. And that was really something that helped spark this offense. And obviously the last part was Ben Johnson. Again, Anthony Lynn was coming from a position where he was with the Chargers. He got let go there and had a new opportunity with the Detroit Lions. And unfortunately, it wasn't panning out. The offense was stale. They were stagnant. The run game wasn't going right. We couldn't protect Goff. He didn't have time to sit in and be comfortable, and things just weren't moving for the offense. And then seeing Ben Johnson's ability to be creative and scheme people to be in their most productive positions, it served beautifully. And you saw it with the Lions this year as well. With a better offensive line performance, with a more healthy offensive line, with improved wide receiver play, with a more confident Jared Goff a year in under the Lions system and learning under Dan Campbell and getting more comfortable with the weapons around him, having Jamal Williams back, putting him in position to be your new single-season rushing touchdown leader of the franchise for the Detroit Lions. DeAndre Swift even. I mean, granted, we didn't get to see him at his best all season due to his health, but when he was right and when he was in areas to be and look explosive, he was exactly that. And I think a lot of that credit goes to Ben Johnson. It has to. It has to go to him, man. He's, again, I believe I don't think this is a hot take, but I think it's safe to say he's been the best offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions in the past 10 to 15 years. Well, I don't think that's out of hot take, guys. Again, we just talked about what Anthony Lynn couldn't really do. Darrell Bevell also didn't really have a great tenure with the Lions as the offensive coordinator. Jim Bob Cooter kind of fizzled out as an OC a little bit. Joe Lombardi was horrible from the rip, who also just got fired again with the Chargers. Scott Linehan kind of got stale a little bit with his constant screen game. And then, of course, Jim Coletto, who was the 0-16 Lions offensive coordinator. So that says enough in itself. Yeah, I think Ben Johnson is clearly in a class of his own. And it's not a surprise that he's a hot commodity, and especially for the teams that are going after him too. This is going to be a very aggressive offseason for a lot of different teams. Knowing where they sit in the draft, knowing that the Bears are with the number 1 overall pick, and they're probably not going to stay there. They shouldn't, as far as I'm concerned, unless they just really fall in love with Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. I don't think they're going to stay at that position. It's a lot of teams within the first 13 picks. I want to say there's 7 teams within the first 13 picks that need quarterbacks, that need a new quarterback. I believe the Texans are up there. The teams that are interviewing for Ben Johnson now, they're in the conversation as well. The Raiders are in that discussion. And then obviously the 2 that are interviewing for Ben Johnson. The Colts need a quarterback bad. They need to get off of Matt Ryan and stop chasing these old injured quarterbacks that are past their prime and need to retire. Matt Ryan needs to be in that class. You try bringing in Phillip Rivers, that didn't work. Carson Wentz, that didn't work. They need a bona fide franchise quarterback, and they need an offensive mind to pair him with. And I could absolutely see them trading up for a C.J. Stroud. I could see them going for a Will Levis. I could see them trying to go for one of these 3 big-time quarterbacks that are one of the biggest names throughout this draft. Because if you're going to bring in a quarterback, if you're going to draft high for a quarterback, you normally want to have that regime start with a fresh offensive mind behind him. And seeing that they've wiped out their quarterbacks and their coaches, they're going to need to replace those with new faces. And Ben Johnson would be a safe one for the Colts, especially if they can get one of those quarterbacks as well. I can see him being very productive with them. Panthers in the same boat. I mean, they played pretty good down the stretch of the last season. I'm surprised they didn't keep Wilkes a little bit longer, seeing the way that he was able to kind of recharge a lot of winning ways within the Panthers organization. But, I mean, hey, I don't blame him for coming to look at Ben Johnson. I mean, seeing what his resume was and seeing how your offense looks. And again, they're in a position where they could trade up as well. They're sitting with the number 9 pick in the draft. They need a quarterback. They're not going to try another experimental year with Sam Darnold or PJ Walker. It's not going to happen. They're trying to find somebody else, whether it's Anthony Richardson or if they try to trade up for one of the top 3 QBs. They can be very active in making that happen. And you want to pair him with a smart offensive mind, where Ben Johnson is a prime candidate this offseason. Now, to me, even though it would be smart for an assistant coach or a coordinator to take advantage of their value while it's at their highest. Like, if Ben Johnson does not agree to become a head coach this offseason, I'll be very surprised. Because, again, it's not a guarantee that the Lions turn out another top 5 offense next year just because. It's the NFL. Things happen. Injuries happen. Like, there's a lot of things that can factor in. And it's not a guarantee that he comes out and looks like he did this past season. So, I expect him to take advantage of his iron while it's the hottest and potentially take one of these offers that'll be presented to him. But I don't think it's crazy to think that he could still end up back with the Lions. If we're talking strictly on just franchise opportunity, because obviously for himself, you're a young offensive coordinator. He's 36 years old. You're trying to establish yourself as the next young offensive mind and a head coach, a head leader of men that you can do and handle in the NFL. I think he's trying to establish himself as that. And even though a head coaching job would help solidify that and it would help him individually, I think if you look at terms of the franchises, this is how the franchises sit in terms of their upside. The upside of the Lions is still extremely bright. And if I'm the front office of the Lions, I'm trying to find a way to get him a raise or an extension, whatever I got to do to keep him a little bit longer, because the upside of the Lions is still tremendous. This offensive line is still top 5 in the league. Jared Goff has shown that he can perform like a top 10 quarterback when things are working right around him. When you have a running game to support him as well, you're also going to have a full year of J-Mo Williams to complement Amon-Ra St. Brown. And if they potentially then also add another receiver, which is very possible, they can either bring a DJ Shark back so they can get that deep threat ability again within that locker room and on that field, or they could draft a receiver to get somebody less expensive. It's very possible they go one of those two directions. But seeing that, and obviously with the direction of the defense too, having the resources that they have, the extra picks, the ability that they have to take this roster and actually solidify it in all of its holes really sooner than later. As soon as this offseason, it wouldn't be crazy to me for him to say, you know what, I appreciate the offer. Thank you, Indianapolis. It was cool meeting with you. Thank you, for flying me out here. I appreciate you. Carolina, you've been awesome. I appreciate your hospitality. It's nice to hear your field. I appreciate meeting all the staff and all nice you guys have been. It's been great. But there's something special going on in Detroit right now. And I'm one of the brains behind it, and I want to see it through. I don't think that's crazy to do. And again, it's strictly based on the franchise outlook. If he's thinking for himself and he wants to establish himself as one of the next great coaches, one of the next great young coaches in the NFL, take the opportunity. But if we're talking about how teams are set up, I think the Jets are going to soon need a new coordinator or a new offensive mind within that locker room. Is their situation great right now? Not necessarily. They have some pieces that work, but that's still a somewhat dysfunctional franchise to an extent. Maybe not even the Jets. Maybe I'll take the Jets out of that. But if you look at other teams and how they're set up, even let's go back to the Colts. The Colts leadership has been bad for years. They've been trying to replay the same idea of getting these old expired quarterbacks, putting them behind these offensive lines with limited weapons around them, and it just doesn't work for them. They've kind of been running the same type of vanilla offenses. They're not doing nothing. And it's not necessarily a guarantee that just because, this could be a situation where the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And seeing that the Lions are building and brewing something special, which I don't think anybody is questioning at this point, knowing what his imprint was on that team and what it has been for the Lions, it's not a guarantee that he walks out that door. That could be wishful thinking on my part, but that's how I see it. Seeing how bright the future is for the Detroit Lions gives me a sliver of little hope that maybe he sticks around for a little bit longer. But we'll see what happens. We'll see how this offseason is going to unfold. Talk to me in the comment section. I'd love to hear your feedback. Do you think Ben Johnson is going to leave? Do you think he's going to leave the Lions? Do you think he's going to become a head coach somewhere? Do you think he's going to stay? What do you think the future is for Ben Johnson in the NFL? I'd love to hear your feedback. Talk to me in the comment section. Make sure you like the video as well. And subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel as we ramp up on our way to 6,000 subscribers. Help us hit that milestone with your love and support. We greatly appreciate it. Make sure you're locking in on our social media as well. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the above. Search and follow Detroit Sports Nation and lock in with me as well at I am Eric Vincent. Thank you all so much for your time and support. We greatly appreciate it. Again, I'll be back again soon with another update right here from the DSN News Desk. Peace.